Hello, guys. Ooh, let's see. Let's try and adjust this a little bit. Ooh, okay. So I'm going to try and adjust this once more. Guys, welcome. You're going to start seeing my bookcase low key. Let's try and adjust this. Guys, I'm so terrible with computers and stuff and tech. And I am just trying. Guys, I'm so terrible at this, honestly. I'm going to need to hire like somebody one day to sort me out with all of this tech stuff because I'm actually such a terrible techie person. Anyway, guys, welcome to another live. Let's hope that this is going to be stable. I'm going to move this a little bit further back so that you guys can see. Hopefully you guys can see what I can see. Oh God. My God, this is just, anyway, guys, I think we're just going to have to work with this. We're just going to have to work with this, okay? So, guys, hopefully you can all hear me properly. You can hear me loud and clear. I'm also hoping that you can see the entire board, okay? So I'm hoping you guys can see the entire board. Oh, yes, now I can. I can see myself in my computer. I hope we're not going to have any sound issues. I'm going to move this even closer and closer. Let me just move this once more, a bit closer. I'm literally just using my my computer to just check the comments and stuff, okay? Anyway, guys, welcome to Language Paper One live stream, guys. Welcome. Obviously, for those of you guys that are coming straight from TikTok, I did like a flyby TikTok live, okay? So I did a TikTok live, flyby, drive-by TikTok even. And I know that you guys had lots of questions. Let me just adjust this. I hope you guys can see. I'm trying to adjust it and, oh yeah, here we go. Yes, now hopefully you guys can see, okay? So guys, welcome to another live, okay, guys? I'm gonna be looking this side because that's where my computer is. And I want to make sure that we don't have any sound issues, okay? Because I always know that there's some keyboard warriors amongst you who want to give me a hard time if everything is not entirely perfect. So obviously I'm gonna be checking the comments just to see if there's any issues, guys. Also, lots of people, I think the 2024 GCSE word is cooked. Like, I've been trying to figure out what this cooked means. Like, if you're cooked, does that mean you're in trouble? But if you're cooking, that means you're doing well. Anyway, I'm going to assume that cooking means you're doing well. So I'm going to try to be cooking today's live, okay? Anyway, guys. So guys, I think you can all hear me properly. Let's get to it with language paper one, okay? So guys, obviously you guys have language paper one tomorrow, nice and early. And guys, what I wanted to do in today's live stream is to cover literally all 5 questions in this exam. But also, guys, you're going to see that in the board behind me, the majority of the board is dedicated to question number 5, okay? The majority of the board is dedicated to question number 5, precisely because half of the overall paper's marks are in this section. What that means, guys, is half of the effort in tomorrow's exam will need to be dedicated both in revision and obviously in your actual practice to question number 5, okay? So guys, whilst I'll obviously go over question 1, 2, 3, and 4, I'll also be focusing on question number 5. Number 1, giving you guys, and I mentioned this in my drive-by TikTok live, okay? So I did like a literal 30-minute live just now, and I know some of you guys might be coming over from TikTok. It was just drive-by, pew, 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 and then I was out. But I mentioned that I'm going to be going over 3 separate stories and 3 separate story plans that you guys can memorize, which literally cover everything when it comes to different settings, different issues, right? So for example, if it's a story to do with an outsider, if it's a story to do with abandoned, if it's a story to do with, for example, the forest setting or in nature, literally these 3 stories and these plans, I'm going to be showing you guys how you can be covered going into the language paper 1 exam with these story ideas, okay? However, guys, I'm going to go into, and I'm going to spend the first 30 minutes today going over section A, okay? So section A is obviously your comprehension, okay? So this is where you've got your insert. The insert you're given is always going to be fiction. And then you've got to answer 4 questions based on this section. So I'm going to start by talking about that and then look at question number 5, which is section B, okay? However, guys, let's begin by quickly, okay, and I literally always do this in my masterclasses. In fact, I think there's also probably going to be some of you guys coming over for my language masterclasses, but you guys are completely covered. We've literally looked at all exam papers since January, right? You guys are probably just joining in for the vibe. However, as I always do, okay, I always begin by going over timings, exam timings, so that you guys, when you're going in tomorrow, you are primed for success. In other words, guys, make sure you don't let yourself down by not giving yourself enough time to answer the questions that matter. Question 4 and 5, which make up 75% of your exam, absolutely have to be answered, okay? But how do you manage your timings for all 5 questions? Now, guys, remember that you've got 1 hour, 45 minutes of this paper. This is how you approach tomorrow's exam strategically from a timings perspective. The first 10 minutes of your exam, okay, so let's imagine you're working through it chronologically. Question 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, okay? In terms of timings, this 1 hour, 45 minutes. Always spend the first 60 seconds of this paper reading through the question paper, okay? So reading question 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, highlighting the keywords, getting a lay of the land, because if you do that, it gives you spoilers and it tells you, number 1, what to look for in the exam question, but also number 2, what to highlight and to find in terms of language and structure, okay? 60 seconds spent reading through 5 questions and also having the question 5 story question bubbling at the back of your mind. Then the remaining 9 minutes of this time, read the insert, but now you're reading it looking for answers based on questions 1, 2, 3, and 4, okay? Then after you spent that initial 10 minutes of your 1 hour, 45 minutes of your exam, what you need to do is, of course, approach question number 1. We've read the insert. Number 1 by this stage, guys, if you've practiced enough, you will know it's a brief question, okay? So you have literally to look at the first paragraph or the first part of the source, find 4 things that are true. Write 4 statements, and guys, these are some of the do's and don'ts of Section 8, okay? Make sure you don't commit some of these problems and these crimes, okay? With question 1, the biggest way you can lose out on getting the 4 marks for question 1 is just by not looking at the right lines. As long as you find information from the correct lines, just find those 4 separate things that are true, okay? That's question number 1 in Section 8. Then question 2, this is the language question, okay? Now, remember with question 2, and guys, in terms of what and how to structure your paragraphs, for those of you that have been following this channel long enough or even following first year tutors on TikTok long enough, you will know that I love peel paragraphs, point, evidence, explanation, link. Of course, if you want to use a different paragraph style, use that. But I'm going to be talking about these answers from a peel perspective, point, evidence, explanation, and link, okay? Now, with question number 2, I would suggest, as it's an 8 marker, write at least 2 peel paragraphs. And this is what you must absolutely not do in your question 2, the language question in tomorrow's exam. Number 1, in question 2, the language exam, you need to demonstrate an awareness of subject terminology. This is what is called your AO2 marks, okay? Are you able to demonstrate an awareness of language and structure? So when you are selecting evidence for question number 2, okay, make sure when you're analyzing, you're saying, okay, how does the writer use language to demonstrate blah, 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 you find a quotation. Don't say, the writer uses this word. That's not talking about language. You need to mention things like similes, metaphors, alliteration, all of that stuff in order to access AO2. And speaking of AOs, question 1 tests your AO1. Are you able to interpret implicit and explicit information? Basically, you're able to answer the question, okay? Going back to question 2, the first don't is when you are talking about language for question 2, paper 1. Do not say, the writer uses this word. Label it. Is it a noun, verb, adjective, adverb? Is it sibilance? Is it alliteration? Whatever it is, okay? But the other big thing, in question 2, the bullet points are always the same, okay? So this is language paper 1, question 2. You always have a third bullet point, which is to do with how the writer's use of sentence forms reinforces whatever language question you're supposed to answer. This question is a bit troublesome, or this bullet point is a little bit troublesome because sentence forms are technically structure, right? What do you do in terms of sentence forms? I always say the same thing for this question. In one of your peel paragraphs, when you're answering how the writer uses language to blah, 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 mention in this declarative sentence. Declarative sentence is just simply a sentence that states a fact, feeling, or mood. It is a function of a sentence. Every single sentences, including what I'm speaking in, are declarative sentences, okay? And I'm going to quickly check the chat and hopefully you guys can hear what I'm saying. Okay, yes you can, okay? I'm a little bit paranoid after that live that I did with Mr. Sally's and then there was no sound, okay? Anyway, guys, I'm literally giving you guys a run through of section A, okay? Let's carry on to question number 3. And guys, this is section A. Big don'ts for tomorrow's exam, okay? And I hope you guys are paying attention to what I'm going over, because once this live is over at 6 p.m, I would like to recommend you go onto AQA's website, download some past paper questions, and then apply this information and this knowledge in your final hours where you're going to practice for this exam, okay? Now let's talk about question number 3. This question is always worded in the same way, okay? This question says, how has the writer used language to interest you as the reader, okay? Remember, with question 3, which is the structure question, okay? So this text is taken from the beginning of a novel. This text is taken from the end of a novel. This text is taken from the middle. Whatever it is, how has the writer structured the text to interest you as a reader? Number 1, you are always interested, okay? Even if the text that you get tomorrow in the Language Paper 1 exam is boring as sin, and you literally are almost struggling to keep your eyes awake, you always say that we are interested as readers. The writer has successfully structured the text to interest us as readers. Use that sentence starter. And the biggest criminal offense you can commit in question 3 in tomorrow's exam is the following. Literally, when you are talking about how the writer uses the beginning, middle or end, how the writer zooms in, how the writer shifts focus, right? You use some really good structure, but then you say the following once you've quoted. This makes the reader want to read on. The writer has used this structure to make the reader want to read on. Guys, that is a criminal offense that you are committing in this question, okay? Please, guys, in tomorrow's exam, and this is a common mistake that students always make when they think they are analyzing, they say, oh, the writer has used, the character at the beginning of the structure of the text to interest us because of blah, blah, blah. This makes us want to read on as a reader. Guys, you're not saying anything if you say this phrase, okay? And this literally makes teachers tear their hair out, okay? Examiners will literally, if they live in London, they will want to throw themselves in the River Thames if they see yet another essay that says it makes the reader want to read on. Don't do that. In question 3, which is the structure question, this is how you answer it. When you see an interesting quote or something that's interesting in the beginning, middle, or end, okay, that's structure, think about, does it create an atmosphere of unease? Hence, does it make us feel tense? Does it create, for example, or depict something that's really positive and upbeat? Hence, we feel a sense of excitement, a sense of joy, a sense of exuberance. That's analysis as opposed to, and again, this is a common crime students commit in question 3, okay? Please don't be one of them in tomorrow's exam. Instead of saying it makes the reader want to read on when you're talking about structure, say, does it paint a vivid image, hence making us more curious as readers? Does it make us intrigued? Does it make us engaged? Does it make us feel frightened? Does it make us feel joyful or exuberant? That's analysis for question 3, okay? Question 4, this is the 4th and final question in section A. This question, unlike question 2 and 3, right, we're talking about AOs here. AO2, language and structure terminology. Question 4 tests what is called your AO4, okay? Your ability to evaluate. What that means in this question is, when you're given the student statement, a student having read this said, so for example, in last year's exam, the narrator, he's right to feel really scared of the hyena, right? This was last year's paper. I went over it with my class. The way the writer describes the hyena, we feel really scared, right? And say you've got that extract and that type of question. If what's going on in the extract doesn't contradict what's happening in the text, you can simply just agree with the student statement, okay? However, if your teacher, or if you feel like, I don't feel like I'm evaluating enough by completely agreeing, you can use this structure alternatively, okay? Question number 4, when you're evaluating, to what extent you agree with the student statement. Largely agree, so write at least 3 pill paragraphs of this question. 2, agree, right? So maybe you talk about language, and 1, talk about structure. And then add a 3rd paragraph where you try and find a way to disagree. I don't personally feel like it's necessary to disagree, especially if what's going on in the statement doesn't contradict what's happening in the text. However, if you want to feel like, no, I really want to make sure I'm evaluated, I really want to make sure that I'm kind of talking about the student statement, showing counter arguments, okay, structure your answer tomorrow like this. 2 agree paragraphs, and then 1 disagree paragraph. And then make it a mix of language and structure observations, okay? So that's the approach for section A. And guys, as I said, with tomorrow's exam, language paper 1 with section A, what is really important for you guys to do between now and tomorrow's exam, which is now in less than 24 hours, I'd really like to strongly recommend that, number one, you are super clear on the layout of this questions, okay, and what these questions expect of you. This is what you call your AOs, okay, so AO1, AO2, AO4, okay, but also another super important thing you need to be aware of in order to do super well in section A tomorrow is you need to make sure you are very clear on your subject terminology, okay? Question 2, 3, and 4 also test your awareness of being able to find a simile, being able to find nouns, being able to talk about what's happening at the beginning, being able to talk about different sentence types. And guys, if at this stage you're thinking, oh, okay, I don't quite know that much about subject terminology, if I'm answering question number 2, what can I maybe memorize now in terms of good terminology to use versus question 3? This is a terminology that you can use, okay? So guys, for tomorrow's exam, for question 2, the best top 5 subject terminology that you will find in any text that's going to be given to you and put in front of you tomorrow is the following. Guys, when you're looking and answering your questions, look for the writer's use of alliteration, simile, metaphor, oxymoron, and semantic field. These 5 language techniques, okay, they fall under the language category. You will find them in any language paper 1 extract, okay? Memorize these techniques, find them, and then comment on them in both question 2 and question number 4, okay? And just to be clear, guys, alliteration is when 2 or more words start with the same letter. Simile is when you compare 2 things using like or as. Metaphor is when you say something is something else. Oxymoron is opposites, hot, cold, up, down. And finally, semantic field, which is my favorite language technique. This is when you've got 2 or more words which belong to the same wider category. So for example, roses, lilies, daffodils belong to the semantic field of flowers, okay? That's language techniques that you will absolutely find in tomorrow's exam, okay? In any extract that's put in front of you, especially any fiction extract, okay? However, for question 3, these are the top 5 structure techniques. If you're not clear what structure means or what to look for with structure, talk about these and find them. If you mention what's happening at the beginning, middle, or end of an extract, you're talking about structure. That's number 1. If you're mentioning whether the writing is in first person or third person narrative, that's structure, okay? So that's number 2. If you focus on anywhere where there's any type of zooming in or zooming out, okay? So for example, if there's any super detailed description of, say, a house, right? So, you know, you're given a description of a house and then you're told, you know, of every single room, the smell that's zooming into the house. Or for example, I'm going to go back to the 2023 exam, which had a hyena. And there was a very vivid description of this hyena, right? Which looked like a really grotesque creature. That description zoomed in on the hyena. If you talk about zooming in or zooming out, that is structure. That's number 3. Number 4 is declarative sentence, my favorite, which you can use for sentence forms in question 2. And then the 5th thing, which goes over a lot of students' heads, but guys, if you're able to spot this tomorrow, your examiners will be super impressed because you're picking up on nuanced structure, the structure that's harder for lots of students to see, and often a lot of students across the country will probably not even comment on it. This is the use of time. Any shifts in time, in other words, talking about how the writer uses time as a structural feature, okay? So for example, if 10 o'clock is mentioned, then it was midday, right? That's a shift in time. If you're told that it was the morning, then by the end of the extracts, it's the evening, that's a shift in time. That is really powerful structure to comment on and to try and find. Any reference to time, any reference to a particular clock. So for example, 1 o'clock, then it was 3 o'clock, or any reference, any very subtle references to it was the morning, or it was the evening dawned, then it was nighttime. If you mention that, that's really powerful structure, okay? So guys, I hope that kind of clears up everything when it comes to section A for tomorrow's exam. I personally believe that it's actually really easy to do well in section A, as long as, number 1, you read the questions first, okay? Because if you read the questions first, you know what you're looking for in the extract, so you're maximizing on the time during your exam, okay? You're not just reading the insert just to read and then looking for the questions afterwards. But the second reason why I think it's actually fairly straightforward, as long as you have your technique and your timings down to a T, why I think it's really straightforward to do well in section A for paper 1 is because as long as you're really clear on language techniques and structural techniques for question 2, 3, and 4, because see, number 4 is almost a combination of the 2, you'll do super well, okay? So, and also, of course, the other thing is being articulate in your writing, being able to use ambitious language. You know, when you're adding more than one paragraph, you start off your first paragraph by saying, firstly, the writer powerfully presents blah, blah, blah. Additionally, as your second paragraph, add some finesse in your writing. Travel between your paragraphs using things like moreover, furthermore. Incorporate all of that into your answers tomorrow and you're going to be doing super well, okay? As long as you literally do those basic things, you're already in grade 5 category, okay? And then how far you move up through the different bands depends on how much you write and how much detail of analysis you go into, okay? So guys, before I go into section B, which obviously is the big mammoth creative writing question, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly check the comments and just see if there's any comments or questions, and then dive into question number 5, okay? Because guys, when it comes to 5, as it's worth 50% of the marks, you need to literally get this down lock, stock and barrel. If guys, arguably, let's argue you literally get 4 marks in question 5 and you don't get very much in section 8, right? Which is worth half of the paper. That means at the very least you're walking out with a grade 5, right? So you want to do super well in question 5, and then anything else, any other question you do additionally well, you're just literally moving up through the bands, okay? However, guys, I'm going to quickly see if there's any questions. Right, guys, so in terms of the exam board, guys, the exam board I'm looking at today is AQA. The Edexcel gang, guys, Edexcel, I have so many videos I've created. None of you guys watch it, right? So I've literally created all of this Edexcel material and nobody from the Edexcel side ever watches my stuff. Whilst the AQA gang are like, please do this, please do that, no, please do this, okay? So guys, I'm looking at AQA. Obviously, Edexcel gang, if I put out a vote, please vote, and then I'll obviously cover Edexcel if enough of you guys want to watch Edexcel, okay? Anyway, let's see. So, what should I do first? Okay. In terms of exam techniques, so there's a question that keeps on coming up. How should I approach each question? Okay, I've not yet covered question 5. What question should I do first tomorrow? Guys, and again, I've said this in my masterclasses, okay? So again, I know that there's a few of you guys who are part of my masterclasses who are just joining in for the vibes because we've literally been practicing since January, right? So you guys are absolutely fine. What I believe, okay, and guys, when I'm teaching this stuff, I always see it from the perspective of, if I were in your shoes as a student, what would I have found most useful and what would have resonated for me? My suggestion is be super strict on your timings and then work through the paper chronologically so that you can warm up for creative writing as long as you are disciplined with your timings, okay? So if I were in your position and I'm sitting this exam 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm still cold, right now it's raining, right? So I'm just like coming in from the rain, I'm sitting in front of my exam, I know this exam matters, so I'm stressed out and I'm frazzled. I probably don't want to start off with creative writing, okay? My head is just going to be too full. I'm going to try and ease myself in by reading the insert, reading the questions first off, have the question 5 at the back of my mind. Then I read the insert to warm myself up, okay? Because even the insert, for example, which is a story, I can maybe borrow some interesting words from the story when I get eventually to creative writing, okay? So my suggestion is be super strict with yourself on timings. This is my suggestion. And work through the questions chronologically. So first 60 seconds, read the questions, know what you're looking for in the insert, then the remaining 9 minutes of this 1 hour 45, read the insert, okay? Highlighting what's relevant to the questions. Then question 1, 5 minutes, question 2, 10 minutes, question 3, 10 minutes, question 4, 20 minutes. Then the lion's share of the remaining 50 minutes spent on question 5. However, if you have literally practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced, and much as you try, you cannot finish section 8, questions 1 to 4 within 1 hour, 45 minutes, within 1 hour, okay, because you want to use the last for 45 minutes to 50 minutes on question 5. You've tried your best, you always just overrun, work backwards, okay? So if you always just find yourself getting carried away with question 2 or question 3 or question 4, work backwards, okay? That means obviously when you go into your exam tomorrow, if you're always overrunning in section A, start with question 5, spend 50 minutes on that question, make sure you then move on after 50 minutes, then do question 4, read the insert, then question 4, 3, 2, 1, okay? As long as at least you manage to finish question 5 and question 4, you have answered 75% of the marks. However, guys, my suggestion and what I personally would find works for me is not doing the creative first, because like doing a story first thing in the morning is pretty intense. I would find that, okay? But if I'm really bad with my timings, start with 5, then 4, secure 75% of the marks, then 3, 2, 1. If your timings are really bad, okay? Right, so how many paragraphs should the last question be? Okay, so I'm going to get into the last question. Okay, right, guys. People are already asking about question 5, so I'm going to move on. I'm going to just have one final word about how many paragraphs per question for section A before I move on. Section A, question 1, there's no paragraphs, right? You just find 4 things that are true. Question 2, which is a language question, minimum 2 Peel paragraphs. Then question 3, which is a structure question, once more, minimum 2 Peel paragraphs. I would suggest one hack maybe to get around this is what you can do is have one chunky paragraph where you talk about what's happening at the start versus what's happening at the end. So you're talking about 2 separate bits of evidence, then you contrast them, okay? And when you do so, you then maybe look for perhaps how time is used to maybe shift the narrative forward, to move the narrative along, whatever it is. But in one chunky paragraph in question 3, you can take a bit of evidence from the start, a bit of evidence from the end. And what that means is not only are you talking about structure, but you're answering the top 2 bullet points, okay? Because the first bullet point always talks about how the writer focuses you on the beginning. Second bullet point is to do with change of focus, okay? If you're able to write an additional paragraph, even better, okay? So maybe your first paragraph would be chunky, contrast what's happening beginning versus the end, and then your second paragraph, think about another structural feature, this stuff, okay? So 2 Peel paragraphs for question number 3. Then question 4, minimum 3 Peel paragraphs. Make it a mix of language and structure when you are agreeing or disagreeing. Now let's talk about question number 5, because there's been lots of questions related to number 5, okay? As you can see here, guys, the lion's share of this board is for question number 5, okay? Because it's worth half of the paper's overall marks. Therefore, you need to make sure you set aside a minimum of 45 minutes. I think 50 minutes personally. That time is sacred, okay? So, question 5, let's quickly talk about it. How much should you write? How much you should write for question number 5? Minimum 5 paragraphs. And when you're doing question number 5, okay, and for those of you who've come over from TikTok, you have seen my flyby story, okay? That story was obviously very brief. If you wrote a story of that caliber, because it's brief, it probably was like, I would say grade 7, okay? So it had lots of like ambitious language and so on, but I only had about 30 minutes to finish it. In fact, I was waffling for like 20 minutes, so, you know, I had like 15 minutes. Anyway, however, if you think about even the story that I structured on TikTok, I literally separated it into 5 distinct paragraphs because I was following the story mountain structure. I think I've drawn a story mountain here. Here we go. So guys, as you can see here, I absolutely love the story mountain structure. And guys, actually, I would like to recommend you watch my creative writing model answer. I think it's called something like how to get 40 out of 40 in creative writing. If you want to see how in just 5 paragraphs you can still get full marks. Okay, it's a 12-minute video. Watch it afterwards. It's even in the description box. Now guys, the reason why I really suggest and recommend doing a 5-paragraph structure for creative writing and splitting it into your beginning paragraph, okay? So paragraph 1 is beginning, establish the setting, use pathetic fallacy, establish the mood. Then your second paragraph being the build-up, this is where your character goes on some form of adventure. Then your third paragraph, your problem, the obstacle that the character faces. Then your 4th paragraph, resolution, how do they resolve it? And then the ending can either be like a nice ending or a cliffhanger. The reason why I suggest using the story mountain structure, guys, is because if you think, so if you're like a film buff, for example, right? You love watching Netflix, you love watching films or series. Guys, if you think about films, series, books, any story that you read, they all follow a very basic story arc, okay? There's always some kind of interest that's sparked when you're watching the beginning of the film, right? It's either the film starts with something really crazy and we still see the setting, right? So we see it's either dark or light. Then you introduce the main character or characters. Then they somehow go on some form of adventure. Then they meet some obstacle before they resolve that obstacle and end. Guys, every story, film, book, whatever, follows this very basic story arc. If you strip away all the extras of any story, any film that you love that you've ever watched, if you strip away what is the basic storyline of this film that I love, this book that I love, it literally follows a story arc. Hence why I personally love just following a story mountain structure. And it also makes it easier for you to see, okay, as I'm building up a story, am I adding the relevant things, okay? Another thing with question 5, okay, so now section B. I would like to recommend, guys, so in tomorrow's exam, you're going to get a choice. You're going to have descriptive writing and a story. Guys, I don't know if you watched one of my shorts where I rank the top 3 worst creative stories of all time. All of the stories that AQA has set, or even all of the question 5s that AQA has set in terms of the worst questions, have all been images. I'll be honest, the zoo image last year was horrendous. Previous year before that, there was some weird kitchen image, okay? Again, description. Previous year before that was like some sunset, people walking on some street, and that's the image, right? Literally, guys, if you look at past AQA questions, the image, the description has been atrocious. Whilst the story, you can start at one point and end at a different point, right? The story, you know, I know last year's story was a little bit challenging, right? It was to do with an animal, a human meeting an animal, but still you can kind of like think, okay, this is challenging, but I'm going to have 2 main characters, right? A human and an animal. I'm going to develop it in this way. As opposed to the zoo image, that image was atrocious. I'll be really honest, okay? So this is in my very humble personal opinion. I think you should go for the story. And of course, guys, when I'm going over this question 5, I'm going to go for the story option, okay? So guys, this is the big do's when you are preparing for this part of the paper, okay? So we've established you're writing 5 paragraphs. You're following the story mountain because every single story has a story arc, right? So you're just following the same kind of story arc, right? Beginning, build up, problem, resolution, and ending. Now, in terms of the 3 main things you want to do, right? Number 1, going into tomorrow's exam, plan 3 main story ideas that can fit any question that comes up, okay? And in a second, I will literally go over all the past June questions that came up, literally from 2017 to 2023, and then I'll show you how each of these stories can be used and they can fit in any of these questions that come up in the past, okay? So that's the first thing you need to do to get to really go into your exam tomorrow for question 5, feeling super confident. The second thing you need to do when you are preparing for this part of your exam is try to make sure you use ambitious language and vocabulary. Memorize at least 10 really powerful phrases that you could use at different points of your story, okay? Again, if you're not sure where to start, just watch my Ambitious Words videos. Again, I've literally linked them all in the description. So if you're not sure where to start, go to the description of this live stream, click on the link for the Ambitious Words, and I think then it's hyperlinked to the other ones, okay? Memorize those and you'll be fine, okay? Then the third thing you guys need to do when you're preparing for the story mountain, the third thing, and to be honest, this is you must not do, okay? So this is number 3. When you're preparing for this and also writing tomorrow's exam, please avoid using cliches. Your story, again, guys, this is almost as criminal as it makes the reader want to read on, okay? Do not end your story with cliches. I woke up and suddenly it was all a dream. And suddenly everything went dark, okay? So try to avoid cliches in your story, okay? Try to make sure that there's originality in your content. Because, guys, now this is the AOs, Assessment Objective 5 and 6. When I say AO, this is what your examiners are marking your story against, okay? In question 5, you are being tested on AO5. AO5 means, are you able to write imaginatively and creatively? Are you able to write with some originality, okay? That counts to 24%, or rather to 24 marks. However, you also have to think about your AO6, which is 16 marks of the 40 marks. What that means is, are you using correct spelling, punctuation, and grammar? Are you using ambitious language and vocabulary? Are you using a range of sentences? Incorporate that into your stories, okay? So guys, I'm going to go in the assumption that you guys will follow my advice and you're going to go for the story rather than the image. Because as I said, guys, I hope I've convinced you that literally the worst past questions for question 5 have all been descriptions, okay? Literally last year's image of the zoo, I think was atrocious. The image before that was the kitchen, atrocious. The image before that was people walking in the sunlight, horrendous, okay? The image before that was like this arc, terrible, okay? All of them are descriptive. Hence why I think go for the story, okay? So, as I said, guys, let's look at these 3 story ideas and how they can work really well with all past paper questions that have come up since 2017 when this syllabus was started. And actually, I'm going to talk about the past questions, guys. So that as I'm going through these story plans, right, just memorize these story plans for tomorrow, okay? But you can then also see how they work with all of the past paper questions. So guys, please pay attention to the fact that, okay, in 2017, the story question that came up, right, this question was, Write about two people from different backgrounds, okay? So this story or this story question was asking you to talk about two separate people from different backgrounds. The image for that paper, by the way, was somebody sitting on the bus or like people inside a bus. That image was atrocious, okay? So that's 2017. The 2018 paper that came up, the story question was write a time when things turned out unexpectedly. So a story where there's a major twist. One of these stories has a major twist. To be honest, all of these stories have twists, okay? But that was the question that came up in 2018. 2019 was you were asked to write a story with the title Abandoned. And the image for that one, I remember, it was a woman walking through like a busy, crowded market. So there was like meat hanging somewhere, there were like vegetables, there was a man with his back to her. Again, I would say that image was okay, but the image I personally feel was more challenging than this story where something or someone is abandoned, okay? It gives you a lot of room. The 2020 paper was an event that cannot be explained. To be honest, you could use exactly the same story idea that you might use for the 2018 one unexpectedly with this one. 2021, it was a story about a new beginning. The 2023 question was write a story about a life-saving rescue. That's the model answer actually with my creative writing 40 out of 40 video. I've linked that in, you can watch that. And then the 2023 last year's paper was write a story about a human meeting an animal. Guys, let me walk you through the 3 story plans that I believe cover all of this, and to be honest, pretty much cover different settings and different ideas that you can use. Starting with this first story, which if, for example, you're asked to write a story that has some type of mystery or some type of terror, or where there's more than one person, i.e. 2 people from very different backgrounds. Here's a story plan, memorize it after this live is over, go off, maybe spend like a few minutes, jotting down some phrases that you can use for each section, okay? So let's say you have to write a story about people from different backgrounds or 2 people, whatever, right? This is how you could use this story, and with this story, I'm gonna end it on a cliffhanger, okay? So this is my plan. My beginning paragraph is the sun is rising. I'm on holiday, okay? So this is my beginning paragraph where I'm going to use phonetic fallacy to establish a really positive mood and an atmosphere. So the sun's rising and I'm really excited as I stroll along the coastline. I'm on holiday, maybe in somewhere like Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, right? That's the most exotic place that I can imagine, and I'd love to go to Brazil one day. So I'm going to imagine that I'm in Brazil, strolling along the coastline. Paragraph 1, I'll establish the setting. Paragraph 2, I then spot clustered palm trees and dense jungle to my right, which is where tourists avoid. So I'll go along, this coastline. It's really nice, early, beautiful morning. I'm walking. And this one, by the way, guys, for those of you that have studied Lord of the Flies, you probably kind of see some Lord of the Flies-esque imagery there. So I'm walking along the coastline in my build-up paragraph, and I notice that there's this cluster of palm trees. If I veer off the coastline and go through this dense cluster of trees, tourists tend to avoid it. But because I love an adventure, I decide, I know I shouldn't be going there, but I'm going to go. That's my build-up. Then the problem. My heart races as I venture deeper and deeper through this thicket of trees. These trees are all clustered together, so now the sun is hidden away. Pathetic fallacy, right? So the sun is hidden by the trees, and I enter the heart of the dense jungle, okay? And just then, so now here is where the problem is going to happen. Just then, as I get deeper and deeper into this thick jungle, I hear a rustle and then a snapping of a twig. And then now this is the resolution, even if it's not really a resolution, because I'm going to end on a cliffhanger, okay? So, paragraph number 4, this is now my resolution paragraph. I then see a flitting shadow that weaves through the trees towards me, right? So I see I'm kind of frozen to the spot. In these trees, I've gone too far from the coastline. And then I see this shadow flitting in, weaving in and out of these trees, and then it's heading towards me, okay? And then I'm frozen on the spot. What happens at the ending? I'm going to move towards my cliffhanger. The shadowy figure emerges, and it is a shaggy-haired beard man with wild eyes who stares directly at me as he slowly moves towards me. That's going to be my story. Beach setting, cliffhanger, okay, so there's going to be this person with maybe wild eyes who's heading towards me, meaning maybe I'm going to be in danger, right? And of course, what does this cover? This covers a story about 2 people from very different backgrounds, right? Also, I suppose, things turning out unexpectedly, even for instance, maybe if I change the crazy guy who's heading towards me and I say an animal, well then it can also fit into a human meeting an animal. That's story idea number 1 that you can use for your exam tomorrow. Story idea number 2 is one which is to do with anything that's unexpected, a discovery or an outsider, and I'm going to use a circular narrative, okay? So this is my story idea, guys. So, starting off with pathetic fallacy in my beginning paragraph, okay? So I'm crying, it's raining, I'm gazing at paper, sheaves of paper in my hand. So I'm going to flash forward at the beginning, okay? So I'm crying, looking down and gazing at sheaves of paper, and my hands are trembling as I'm holding one sheet. So maybe there's sheets of paper littering the ground around me, right? And then I think things had been easier or better just hours before. My world had not collapsed hours before. Then in my same beginning paragraph, I flash back to a rainy day where I'm standing outside my grandmother's cottage. That's my first paragraph, okay? So now I'm flashing back. Then, second paragraph, I enter into the dim interior of my grandmother's cottage and reminisce because I realize, my grandmother will never come back, so I'm here in her cottage, she's died, and I'm here to pack away all of her belongings. My mother, who's her daughter, is too distraught to help, so I'm doing it myself, right? But I'm doing it with a heavy heart, and I need to pack away all her worldly belongings. Second paragraph. Third paragraph, which is now my problem, is my chest feels like it's being squeezed because I'm overwhelmed with, where to start. So I go upstairs to the loft. I can't start in the sitting room. There's too many memories here. I can't start in my grandma's bedroom and I go upstairs. I'm going to start in the loft where, I never really go into my grandma's loft. And now I'm going to go into my resolution, right? So I sweep past, I go upstairs, sweeping past all the musty rooms. Then I go upstairs to the loft, right? I describe all of that. And my eyes are drawn inside the loft to a dusty, locked set of drawers. And then what I do is I tug these drawers towards me. Ending paragraph, this is where I end with a circular narrative. I force the drawers open and papers fly out of the drawer towards me. And as they settle on the floor, one of them catches my eye. And when I pick it up, I look at it and stare in disbelief because it's my adoption certificate that my mum had hidden in the loft. That story fits into something that turned out unexpectedly, an event, perhaps event that cannot be explained, okay? So this is also, for example, let's say tomorrow you're asked to write about something, a story to do with discovery even, okay? Or even perhaps a story that has something to do with an outsider. Then you realize you're an outsider, okay? That's second story plan. Third plan that you can use. And also, by the way, guys, pay attention to the fact that this is in a beach setting. This is in an indoor setting, okay? Inside a closed location. Third story, before we then start wrapping up today's live stream, and I'm going to answer any final questions, okay? So, final story. This story actually is inspired by last year's question. I think last year's question was really interesting because a lot of people hadn't foreseen the question asking for a non-human character, okay? So yes, last year's question was to do with a human meeting an animal. So when I thought about that question, I was thinking, okay, actually it's also good to plan a story idea that could be substituted for another human being, an animal, let's say a robot, whatever it is, okay? So this story idea could include either an animal, robot, or an animal, okay? So once more, and guys, by the way, all my beginning paragraphs are always to do with the weather, okay? When I'm setting the scene, I use the weather. And I use positive pathetic fallacy. But of course, guys, instead of the sun, you can use rain, fog, whatever it is, okay? Anyway, here I'm going to start off with the sun, okay? So I'm walking through a forest and relishing the spring's rays, right? So I'm walking through, it's really nice and early. I'm walking through a forest setting. And really enjoying the first rays of sunshine that are coming through this spring morning. That's my first paragraph, okay? It's spring, sense of hope. Then in my second paragraph, I am there in the forest because I'm going to be jogging, okay? So I remove my hoodie, tie it around my waist and start jogging. I'm breathing in, enjoying this exhilarating, light, heady feeling of being in the forest during the springtime. What is the problem? Paragraph number 3. Then I jog past a tree and then I hear a whimper, okay? So then it's followed by cries. And so I follow this sound to a hole in the forest floor. And then when I gaze down, I look inside this hole and looking back up at me are the frightened eyes of a little child. If those of you guys who've watched this video will probably know how this story ends, okay? So then, and guys, by the way, I've put the word child in a box because you can also use this story and substitute child for an animal, a robot, whatever story you're asked tomorrow, which includes yet another protagonist. but the protagonist is not a human being, just substitute that for the other, animal, robot, whatever. Anyway, paragraph 4, now I'm going down. I'm resolving this issue, right? So I take my jumper, lower it down, and then this child, right, in my story reaches up to grab it. And then 5th and final paragraph, I feel like I'm dragging this boulder out of the hole, and I heave and finally pull them out, okay? And of course, as I said, guys, I literally created a YouTube video on this. I've linked it down. If you want to see how I developed that story in more detail and you can borrow the phrasing and the language, just watch that video. It's about 12 minutes long, okay? Anyway, guys, so with this one, I would say this fits really nicely with this. And to be honest, guys, I think in terms of even someone that's abandoned, right? Because this child is abandoned, right? You can also squeeze it in with that, okay? So guys, as I said, when it comes to question 5, the best way to prepare for it is have 3 really solid plans which cover different settings, okay? So this one is beach setting, this one is indoors, this one is in the forest. Have 3 separate plans with, different kind of events that happen. One of them could end with a cliffhanger, one of them could end with an unexpected twist. And of course, guys, make sure you write 5 developed paragraphs for these stories, okay? So I think that's really it, guys, when it comes to this question. And to be honest, when it comes to how to approach question number 5, because I said, guys, when you're now developing this, try to maybe set aside time to actually write a few phrases, okay? Use some ambitious language. So for example, when you have your opening paragraph describing using the sun using kinetic fallacy, you talk about the sun's gilded rays, or even the sun's golden rays that gild everything it touches. If you're using a dark setting or a twilight setting, you can talk about the crepuscular sky. If you're talking about how someone's trembling, you can talk about your tremulous hands, right? Use also that language. Another language to use, say for example, you want to use a natural setting, is the word bucolic, right? Anything that's idyllic. And you can describe this bucolic setting as you're walking and jogging through the forest, okay? So guys, before I finish off today and before I round up today's live stream even, I keep on talking in TikTok language, okay? So before I round up today's live stream, I'm going to quickly check the chat. Hopefully you guys can still hear me, because I keep on being super paranoid that you guys can't hear me. And guys, by the way, the next live will be with Mr. Sally's, okay? So I'm going to be doing a language paper 2 live before language paper 2, okay? All the way after half term with Mr. Sally's, and I'll be posting on YouTube and kind of letting you guys know when we're going to do that live together, okay? Because I do know that you guys love having Mr. Sally's in this channel, okay? However, guys, I'm going to check the questions and then see if you have, so do you write in first person? Okay. First person versus third person narrative. Guys, when it comes to question 5, my suggestion is go for first person. Doesn't matter, to be honest, okay? So in terms of either going for first person or third person narrative, either works, okay? I personally prefer writing in first person as if I were the person experiencing that, okay? And I want to add something else. Guys, when you look at these stories, I hope you've paid attention to the fact that I don't have a bunch of people in the stories. You only have max 50 minutes for this question. Meaning, if you have 5 protagonists, 20 villains, you start off in the beach, end up in outer space, then you go into intergalactic, then you're killing a bunch of people, right? That story, not only will it be quite messy, it's going to be very hard for your examiner to read. In fact, guys, I always say this when it comes to creative writing. The mark of amateur storytelling is a story that has too many protagonists, too much actions, everyone's getting pew, 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 all of that going on. That's actually the mark of amateur story writing. Guys, when you're writing these stories, try not to have anyone that dies in that story. Try not to have 20 different protagonists, okay? Actually, the mark of a very powerful story is actually a story with a very simple storyline, which you then bring to life. You infuse life into the story by using some really interesting pathetic fallacy, by describing in lots of detail the protagonist, by creating a build-up, having that nice mix of long and short sentences, not this happened and then this happened, then I started in the beach, oh, I started in the beach, then I entered into the hotel lobby, then I got into the jet, then I got into the sky, then I went into intergalactic outer space, then I pew, 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 all of these aliens. Like, that type of story is terrible. In fact, if anything, it's you're highlighting to the examiner, I don't know what I'm writing about, so I'm just going to keep on writing and writing and writing and writing and writing and hope that you get distracted by all of these words in front of you, okay? Guys, you need to have a solid structure and a storyline that's easy to follow, but you bring it to life. Hence why, guys, I always recommend a story mountain structure, okay? So guys, narrative style, I personally suggest going for first person narrative, writing it as if it were you. However, of course, if you prefer third person, go for it, okay? But also when you're developing these stories, don't overdo it with, oh, and this happened, and then 20 people were killed, and then this person happened, and then there was a detective, It's like, firstly, it's really hard for your examiner to follow you. Secondly, you only have 50 minutes, there's only so much you can do in 50 minutes. And thirdly, that's actually the mark of amateur storytelling. Once more, guys, before I then look at more questions, remember, when you even think about your most favorite stories, even films, when you strip away all the action that happens and you ask yourself, if I were to strip down this narrative that I love so much, what is this story about? You find that the storyline is actually quite basic. I'll give you guys an example. One of my favorite ever Disney films is Lion King, okay? I'm biased towards liking Lion King because I'm Kenyan, and you know, there's like a lot of like Kenyan language that's used. There's even a place in Kenya called Hell's Gate, which is like Pride Rock, so I'm very biased. Now, if I then think about that film, right, and I strip away everything in terms of that film, what is this story about, The Lion King? It's basically an uncle kills his brother, the king, then he tries to kill Simba. Simba comes back, kills him, becomes king, okay? Obviously, there's killing that happens. However, the storyline is actually quite basic. It's a basic story of betrayal, right? So, and obviously, for those of you that are Shakespeare geeks, it's borrowed from a story by Shakespeare called Hamlet. The king's brother kills him, becomes king, then the king's son has to basically retake the crown. That's literally the story, okay? So guys, I hope I've explained why you want to keep your story quite simple. So let me have a look at the questions, okay? So let's see, when the examiner's mock get down of reading all the same stories. In terms of all the same stories, if you're talking about memorizing the same stories as everybody else, of course I'll mark you down, right? As long as you have originality, right? Because guys, these are just plans, right? These are not actual paragraphs. So you're developing it in your own way, right? When you're writing, for example, this about a human or an animal, when you're talking about the sun's rays, you know, gilding the ground, blah, 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 you're infusing your own language and terminology, right? You're infusing your own ambitious language. Also, guys, in terms of the examiners getting bored, examiners get bored of reading stories that, number one, have very basic grammar. Number two, examiners get bored of stories which don't paint a vivid image in their minds, okay? They don't, you know, tell us, they don't use olfactory imagery, so imagery that we can smell, we can sense. They don't use visual imagery. They lack in onomatopoeia. The pace doesn't change, right? This is why you want to use a mix of long and short sentences, guys, because you want to change the pace. Just because, guys, you use similar structure, the way your story develops, right? Because you're not writing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences. You're developing a story based on these plans, right? How you manage to do that and how you execute, that's going to determine whether your examiner finds it really boring or they really enjoy what you've written, okay? So I hope that makes sense, guys. How to make your story and how to infuse it and make it really powerful is, number one, have a very clear structure. Again, as I said, guys, you can use one of these ideas. But number two, when you're then now developing the story, use your similes, metaphors, alliteration, your long and short sentences to change the tempo. That's now what brings your story to life. And that's how you keep your examiner really on side when they are thinking, okay, if this person is a borderline 6, 7, I'm going to give them a 7 because I really like this story. They've used some original elements, they've used some really interesting, ambitious words, okay? So I hope that makes sense. Right, so let's see. Can you please break down what each letter means? Guys, letters for this with, I think that's what you guys mean with letters, right? If you're asking about the story mountain, it's beginning, number 1. Build up, number 2. This is where your character goes on an adventure. Problem, this is the issue or the obstacle that they face, paragraph number 3. Resolution, number 4, how do they resolve it? And then ending, number 5, guys, you could either end like a normal ending or a cliffhanger. Make sure it's not cliche, okay? Suddenly I woke up and it was a dream. Everything went dark. Boring and cliche. Don't do it, okay? Right, so let's see. Question 3, effect and time shift. Okay, Guys, the other question is actually to do with section 8, time shift, and question 3. Guys, so I'm now moving to question 3, which is section 8. This question is always worded the same, right? How has the writer structured the text to interest you as a reader? Firstly, guys, you are always interested, always and forever interested. It doesn't matter if the exam paper and the inset you're given tomorrow bores you to tears, you are always interested, and you start your first paragraph by saying, the writer has successfully structured the text to interest us as readers. Use us statements rather than I statements, because you're saying that not only am I interested, but I know and I have an awareness that other readers are interested, which is more sophisticated, okay? So in your answer to question number 3, the writer successfully structured the text to interest us as readers by blah de blah de blah de blah. Let me now go into, firstly, what I mean by a shift in time. Guys, question 3 tests your awareness of structure. How's the writer structured the text? What that means is beginning, middle, and end. However, guys, as I said, a less well-spotted structural feature, which is really powerful, and I even talked about this in one of my YouTube videos. I think it's called Students Always Get This Wrong in Question 3, okay? Just watch that video. But I'll go into detail in terms of time. If the extract you have tomorrow says the following: morning, afternoon, evening, 10 a.m., 11 a.m., 12 p.m., if there's yesterday, tomorrow, all of those are time references. So in terms of picking up on how the writer uses time as a structural device to intrigue and engage us as readers, because that's your analysis, what you need to do when you're answering question number 3 and you're thinking, okay, how can I combine my observation of time with beginning, middle, and end? Think about how time is referred to at the beginning. Is there a particular actual time, right? Like actual, it's 6 o'clock? Or is there any reference to morning, nighttime? Take a little bit of evidence from that. Then see, do they move forwards or backwards by the time you get to the end of the passage, right? So if it says morning and then the ending is evening, well, they've moved forward in time, okay? So this shift in time engages us as, do we hurtle forward and we feel like we can't control time as we're hurtling forward? Or say, for instance, at the beginning, it talks about tomorrow, right? So even it talks about the present. And then there's a flashback, okay, which is again a time shift. This use of time as a structural technique, i.e. flashback, draws us in as readers because it makes us feel intrigued. We feel as if we are unraveling a mystery, okay? So if there's a flashback, usually guys, when you watch any films or any stories where there's a flashback, you're like, ooh, okay, I'm about to learn something from the past. It's like a mystery that's being unraveled, okay? That's how you first pick out time shifts in question 3 and then comment on it. Pick something from the beginning, find if there's a reference to yesterday, today, tomorrow, morning, evening, 10 a.m., 11 a.m., whatever. Then find any reference to time at the end and then either figure out, do they move forward or do they move backward in time, then comment, okay? That's how you answer question number 3 in section A, and that's how you make your responses stand out, okay? And again, guys, remember, as you are picking out these techniques, never, this is criminal, never say, it makes the reader want to read on. This is so interesting because it makes me as a reader want to read on. Oh, I just want to read on. That's not saying anything. You're saying stuff like, does it create a sense of anticipation? Does it make us feel as if we're being hurtled forward? Or is there some sense of mystique, some intrigue created as we go back to learn what's happening in the past? That's how you analyze, not, it makes the reader want to read on, okay? Try not to do that. Right, so guys, I think that's really it in terms of questions. If story idea is bad, should I go for description? I would say so, guys. I don't think description is going to be bad, okay? I really don't, okay? Right, guys, so, do I need a whole plan for the beginning before we start writing a question? Yes, guys, you need to plan. Guys, for question 5, you have to plan. You have to plan for question 5. Of the 50 minutes that you spend in question number 5, the first 10 minutes, which is sacred, you have to plan, okay? Plan from the start to the end. So that also, guys, when you're going through and writing the story, in case you get like a brain freeze, you're able to look back on the plan, okay? So make sure you plan because number 1, it means that it's also easier to follow your story and for you to actually write out your story. But number 2, if you go like blank midway through your writing, you can just revert back to the plan, okay? What do you mean by don't say the word, hang on, guys. I'm trying to, what should I say instead of it makes the reader want to read on? Guys, I've said this so many times. Instead of, it makes the reader want to read on, say things like, so you need to look at the quotation that you've selected, okay? So the first thing obviously is look at the quotation. Here's some analytical things you can say depending on the quote, okay? If the quote is quite positive, does this interest the reader because it creates a sense of excitement, a sense of exuberance, a sense of joy, a sense of anticipation? If it's positive, the statement that you have chosen and your bit of evidence you've chosen, okay? If, say, the quotation you've selected is negative, does it create a sense of trepidation, a sense of anxiety within the reader? Does it maybe create a sense of tension, right? Remember, guys, that if there's some tension or some anxiety, that still makes us want to read on, right? Guys, if you say stuff like, it makes the reader want to read on, the reader is reading the passage anyway. The reader is reading the passage, so they're going to read on anyway. You're stating the obvious, okay? You're not analyzing. So if it's positive, if you get a quotation, the quote you're using is really positive, well, does that create a sense of excitement, okay? So you're analyzing it by saying, this creates a sense of excitement within us as readers. Use words like us, pronouns, third person pronouns like us, rather than I statements, because that's a more sophisticated way of analyzing. But if it's like a negative quotation, right, with, you know, dark imagery, whatever, analytical things you can talk about is things like, does it foreshadow, does it create a sense of foreboding? Because it's foreshadowing something terrible that's going to happen. Foreboding is when you have a bad feeling about something. Does it maybe create a sense of fear, a sense of panic, right? Or for instance, let's say if what you're taking is like vague, a little bit vague, even for you when you're reading, you're like, oh, actually, I don't know whether this is like, you know, something supernatural. Well, does it create a sense of mystique, a sense of intrigue within us, right? Because we are, you know, curious to know what this thing is, right? What this mystery object is, right? That also is really powerful analysis, okay? So that's what you can talk about instead of, it makes the reader want to read on, okay? Because that's not saying anything, okay? So, let's see. How do you plan effectively? Planning effectively is just, guys, in terms of planning effectively, just literally, and I'm thinking you guys are talking about question 5, coming up with your own plans with these types of stories, okay? Or obviously with question, I don't know if you guys need to plan, right? Because you can just, with question 2, you just select the 2 quotations that you're going to use and then go for your 2 peel paragraphs. I don't think you need to plan with these ones. These ones you can just launch into it, okay? It's more so question 5. And planning effectively is literally pre-planning some story ideas. I would like to recommend, guys, don't just plan for one story, okay? Because if the question is totally left field, if the story is something like this, a human meeting an animal, and you have one story plan that doesn't fit that, well, you're going to be a little bit screwed, okay? So maybe you can use some of these plans, of course, also your own story ideas, okay? Right, so, conclusion, you don't need a conclusion, guys. Let's have a quick look. Should we be using question 1 and 2? Should we always go for the story? Okay, guys, question 1, you're not creating anything. So 4 marker, statements are true. You just say what's true. You just restate number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Quotes for 2, 3, and 4 is 1 quote per paragraph. Your first peel paragraph for question 2 is, you know, whatever language technique you picked out, right? This stuff. Find a quotation for that 1 peel paragraph, and then the second will be a second quotation. So it's 2 quotes for question number 2 in 2 separate paragraphs. Then 2 quotes for question 3 in your first paragraph where you juxtapose beginning versus end. And then maybe if you have time, in the 10-minute window you've given yourself, then add another structure observation for question number 3, okay? And then number 4, you're writing 3 separate peel paragraphs, so it's 3 quotes per paragraph, okay? That's literally it. So your first paragraph is language, 1 quotation. Second paragraph, maybe structure, another quotation, another one. Language or structure, 3rd quotation, okay? Right, so, okay, so guys, in media res is starting in the middle of action, yes. Right, guys, so point, guys, I'm finding it a little bit hard to keep up with the comments. So what effects should you look out for? I think I mentioned effects. So guys, I'm going to try and see, so, I've kind of overran. So guys, I'm going to have 5 more minutes left, okay? And I'm going to have to jet. However, in terms of, yes guys, in terms of planning, you can literally plan and annotate on your answering sheet. Yeah, you can do that, okay? Your answering sheet is fine. You can do that, and there's even a section in question 5 even, where you're told, use this space to plan. you are advised to plan your response. So do that, okay? And let's see. Let's have what to do now before the exam. Okay, so guys, very good question, what to do now before the exam, okay? You've got less than 24 hours before the final exam. And actually this will be my wrapping up question, okay? Because I have to go. I even had my watch because I'm keeping an eye on the time. What is the best use of your time between now and your exam tomorrow morning? The best use of your time right now and your exam tomorrow morning is number one, be very clear on timings. Make sure you are super disciplined on your times, okay? And what maybe you can do, guys, is in terms of timings, right? Because I think maybe practicing a whole past paper might be a bit of a stretch right now. Or if you have time, you can do so, right? What you need to do is, firstly, be super clear on how to allocate your times for tomorrow's exam. First 10 minutes, reading the question paper, first 5 questions, as well as the insert. 5 minutes of question 1, 10 minutes question 2, 10 minutes question 3, 20 minutes question 4, and then the remaining 50 minutes on question 5. That's what you need to really be clear on between now and your exams tomorrow, okay? Then the next thing, guys, you need to do between now and tomorrow, be super clear on your terminology. Terminology means language and structure, because this is rewarded in your AO2 marks for question number 2 and 3, okay? So brush up on your language and structure, terminology. That's the second thing to do between now and tomorrow. The next thing to do, guys, is you need to be super clear, and actually, to be honest, this is the third and final major thing to do. Prepare a few story plans for question 5, okay? Question 5 is worth half of the paper's marks. It literally makes or breaks your exam. Meaning, going into the exam tomorrow, you need to have a minimum of 3 separate plans memorized, okay? I strongly recommend not memorizing one story, because if the question that comes up tomorrow is like left field, well, you might be screwed. Instead, memorize 3 plans that touch on different settings, that touch on different types of characters, and then maybe you can write like 100 words for each, just to kind of like get your brain going and so on, okay? And as I said, guys, as a starting point, you can just memorize these 3 plans that I've put forward for you guys. The final thing that you can do between now and tomorrow, just watch my creative writing video, okay? So for those of you that are like, okay, I literally haven't even practiced creative writing, I've never written a full story, I don't know how to, use ambitious words and so on, watch my creative writing videos and even my ambitious words videos, okay? All of those ambitious word videos are like 5 minutes long. Memorize those words, okay? Because you need to also, this test is also a test of your spelling, punctuation, grammar, and your ambitious vocabulary, okay? So also make sure you start memorizing some interesting, ambitious words. The sun's golden rays gilding the sun, right? You can talk about the crepuscular sky, the melodious smell, your tremulous hands, bucolic to describe a forest, all of that stuff. And again, guys, I have put these videos in the description box for your own help, okay? Literally just watch those videos, they're right there. Watch them and you'll be absolutely fine, okay? So guys, I'm gonna head off, okay? Let me see if there's thank you so much, guys. Thank you for the love, guys. Right, guys, I'm gonna head off. I would like to recommend, guys, obviously, for those of you that may have missed when I was going over these story plans, watch the live afterwards, okay? For those of you that are like, oh, you talk too fast, watch it on slower speed, okay? And also, guys, as I mentioned, try to make sure you remember your timings, your terminology, and most importantly, your story plans for tomorrow's exams. I personally feel if you remember these story plans, you're going to be fine. I showed you guys how you can apply them all to different past paper questions. So guys, now it's down to you to make this happen for yourselves tomorrow, okay? So guys, I hope you found this lesson useful. As I said, guys, Mr. Sally's is going to be back, okay? And actually, guys, I'm going to put a poll up. Would you guys like to see a language paper 2 video before I go live with Mr. Sally? So would you guys, especially during half term, find a video useful for language paper 2, like maybe a run through of paper 2, what to do, what not to do, how to spend half term once obviously this exam is over? I'm going to put a poll out and just see whether you guys would like to see a video, or if you just are like, no, I'm not going to be watching anything. The next time I'm going to pick up English is going to be literally the day before my language paper 2 once this is done. Up to you guys, but I'm going to put a poll out and then, ask if you guys want to see a language paper 2 video that you can watch during half term week, Or if you don't want to, then absolutely fine, okay? Right, guys, thank you so much for joining in, guys, okay? What do I do? Question 2 is on a setting. How do I analyze a garden? A garden, guys, watch, I want to say I have a rosy video, but analyzing a garden, you can just talk about kind of bucolic settings, you can talk about supernatural settings, all of that stuff, okay? Right, so you're allowed to repeat what you said in question 2 and 3. Try not to repeat if you can, okay? And also the things that you talk about in question 2 and number 3 are different. Language analysis is totally different to structure, okay? And also things like time as a structural feature, you can only use that in question 2 and not question 3 and not 2, okay? Right, guys, I'm gonna head off, okay? Bucolic, B-U-C-O-L-I-C. By the way, guys, I've mentioned all of these words. In the description, I have a 10 ambitious words video. I literally describe and explain what bucolic means, okay? That's, I think, a bonus word. Just watch that video. It's like 6 minutes long, okay? Guys, literally, between now and tomorrow, just watch the videos. Binge on my AQA playlist, or for Edexcel people, watch my Edexcel playlist. Just binge on those videos and you'll be fine, okay? Right, guys, so I had my watch because it was telling me off. And guys, obviously, for those of you that have headed over from TikTok, the TikTok people who I did like a flyby, pew, 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 pew. I did like a 30-minute live. I hope you guys obviously found this helpful. And guys, I'll be putting up a poll maybe Friday about, I'm going, well, my head's gone blank. Oh yeah, I'll be putting out a poll, guys, as to whether you guys want to have a language paper 2 video to watch with, you know, paper 2 summaries, blah, 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 during half-term week, okay? So obviously you guys vote and let me know if you want me to create a video for that before I go live with Mr. Sally's. He's going to be back one final time on First Degree Tutors channel, literally before the language paper 2 exam, okay? So guys, thank you so much for joining into this live. I hope you found it useful. And best of luck, guys. I have complete faith in all of you guys. You are not, as this 2024 word I keep on seeing, cooked, okay? You guys are going to do well, okay? And thankfully, you don't have to memorize any quotations. So you'll be fine, okay? Just memorize these story plans, okay? Right, guys, I'm going to switch off today's live, and I hope you guys have a good revision session. Take care, guys.